Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Motivational Monday. I am Lucy Hirsch, and we are very excited to have you with us this morning and to be starting this Motivational Monday on Monday, the 1st of August. So thank you, everyone who's watching on live and who has joined us. I must say I'm quite delighted that I get to be with you this morning because my mom is traveling, and due to quite a substantial time difference, she couldn't make it. I think if it was an hour to go, she would have set her alarm for 3 o'clock and joined it because she was very sad to be missing out on this one. But here I am with Stacey, Jess, and Candace. So I'm going to hand over to Stacey and Jess, and then they're going to introduce. Good morning, Stacey. Hello, Jess.
Hi, Lucy. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Lucy, thank you so much for taking your mom's place. It's fantastic. We just love these Motivational Mondays, and we have missed them these past couple of weeks. But it's so lovely to have them at the start of every month on our Monday, where we get to discuss all of our exciting topics. So today we have Candace. Oh, Candace, you are very close to my heart. Thank you so much, because this space is so important to me, and I'm sure so important to all of us women. You know, and negotiating relationships and our emotions is just so vital. So Candace is a neuroscience and emotional intelligence coach, using the power of the mind and emotions to help women and teens have impactful and powerful breakthroughs. She uses emotional intelligence assessments and tools, as well as the Enneagram assessments, to help clients. Oh, sorry about background noise. Sorry, somebody just decided to have a change. So I'm gonna let Candace take over there.
And Stacey, I was saying earlier before everyone came in, I'm quite excited because I know Candace as an acquaintance. We live in the same town. I've seen her girls, but I haven't really touched base properly with her in a few years. So I'm actually quite excited to hear what you do and what you've been up to, Candace. And I know we're going to chat more about that later. But yes, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, guys. It's always lovely to be here with you, Lucy and Jess and Stacey. So I'm a neuroscience and emotional intelligence life coach. Emotions are my absolute passion. I really feel like they are little superpowers that if we tune into them, they really guide us to show up more authentically, show up with intention. And that's really, really important when it comes to relationships. So that's what I do. I mainly focus my coaching on women to really help them rediscover and redefine and reshape who they are so they can live more authentically. And I also have a passion for helping parents of teens. So it's such a tricky space to navigate. And I think if we can build a foundation of empathy and trust and understanding, and empathy is one of the things we're going to be chatting about today, we can really navigate this time with ease. So that's sort of the space that I find myself in as a coach. And yes, relationships is actually a passion of mine. So I'm really, really happy to be chatting about it today.
And Candace, can I ask, because I know I wanted to ask you before, and I said, no, wait, I'm saving it for when we go live. How did you come to find, because what you just described to me is, I'm like, wow, that is amazing that you are it's an interesting path to find yourself on. How did you find yourself on that? Because it must have been a journey. Are you happy to share a bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. So people have always been my passion. Studied psychology after school, but didn't continue with that. But 7 years ago now, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer. And that kind of puts a spanner in the works, if I can say that, in terms of your life. My life was flipped on its head. I had to reassess a lot of stuff, rethink where I was. And I came out the other side. So I've been 7 years clear, which I'm really grateful for. It's like a second chance in life. But it made me realize that my real passion is people. And I really wanted to step into a space of guiding and helping people. And so I did an EQ course, which is why I'm completely passionate about emotions. I did my coaching course. And I've been coaching for 4 years now. And I absolutely love this space, because to watch the transformation, to see these women take ownership, to see these women step into their authenticity is just such an honor. And so this is where I find myself now as a life coach.
Wow, that's amazing. And that's such, I know that must have been at times quite a painful journey, but it's really brought you to this beautiful space. And you've obviously had to face some really hard emotions in, you know, all that process and time. And I know emotions, you're right there, I've actually wrote that down, they guide us, and so often we shut down when we feel them because we don't want to feel it, we don't want to, you know, that. And that must be quite a big thing, of actually like live that pain and like listen to those like those triggers are such like clues to what's going on.
I think the biggest thing, or the biggest lesson that I took from my experience was I've always been a bit of an avoider, avoiding the tough emotions, avoiding the tough situations, sort of finding ways to get around everything. But in that instance, there was no way around. I had to go through that process. I had to, so my favorite saying is, you need to break down in order to break through. Now, I know that sounds completely scary and overwhelming, but I want you to think of like a butterfly or a caterpillar, right? So this little fat caterpillar goes ahead and it makes its cocoon and it surrounds itself with this beautiful protective layer. And what actually happens in that cocoon is it completely breaks down into mush. There is nothing resembling a caterpillar in that cocoon. And this is the messy middle. This is the tough stuff. This is the things that we try and avoid and push away and sweep under the rug. But once that caterpillar has gone through that transformation and redefined itself, it comes out the other side as this beautiful, strong butterfly. And I know it's an analogy that it's used a lot, but for me, it's that mushy middle, that complex time that you're going through, that you can't actually see the end of the tunnel or the light, just to push through because it's coming. The beauty and your life is on the other end of that. So
completely.
Yeah.
And I actually heard a saying the other day about someone, they were saying, oh, it's almost like you just got to let it marinate. Like, you know, before you cook the meat, before you know what I mean? Like just that time where it just like has to marinate. It's just got to sit with it, you know, and just go from there. And we're always so honest, and I know my mom has her own opinions on things, and, you know, sometimes it's different to you. But for me, I'm so excited to chat about empathy, and because I obviously was brought up by a strong woman who encouraged me to face life's difficulties and challenge them, and, you know, don't like, you know, be like a warrior of life, put on your armor, and there were the good things and bad things to that. And I battle with sympathy. I don't like people to, I call it like the oh shame club, like oh shame, like it's my words, like please don't oh shame me, like empower me, support me, give me ideas, love me, like, but don't like every now and again you do want someone to, you know, like to comfort you and make you feel you know, like it's all going to be okay. But I don't like, I want to understand what you mean properly by empathy, because is there a difference between shaming someone, like shame, it must be so hard, and having empathy for them?
100%. So I'm hoping to show you a video a little bit later today by Brené Brown. She is one of my favorite humans in the whole world. She changed my life. I've read most of her books. At the moment, I'm reading Atlas of the Heart. But she very much speaks into empathy and how powerful it is in our emotions. So it's exactly what you said now, Lucy. It's a shame club. Sympathy is and it's a classic South African way of doing things. I mean, it's almost ingrained in us. It's so on autopilot for us to go, oh, shame, that's terrible. And what that actually does in the moment is it's showing pity. And so the person goes, this person's not hearing me, and they pull back. So it actually causes a bit of disconnect when it comes to people. You know, you're not connecting with that person on any level. You're just going, oh, shame. You know, actually, it's uncomfortable for me to be in this space. And this is where the finding the comfort in the discomfort comes in when you're talking about emotions, sitting with that uncomfortable feeling within yourself so you can hold space and be empathetically there for somebody else. And really that is what empathy is. Connecting within something inside of myself so I can connect with that same emotion within you and hold that space, be able to make myself vulnerable in that moment. And it's any relationship that you have, whether it's your partner or your parents or your children or your work colleagues. And it really comes, for me, empathy is a skill set. Sorry, I got a bit tongue-tied. It's not something that actually happens that easy. I don't think a lot of people know that they're stepping into an empathetic space or not. It's generally sympathy.
And I think, Candice, to add to that, we sometimes feel really uncomfortable in sensitive situations, and we feel really uncomfortable in silence. So when somebody comes to us with a problem or a story or whatever it is, we feel like we have to say something and we feel like we have to help. And I think that's where the sympathy kicks in. versus the empathy, because empathy, all the person really wants is for you to be there, to hear them out, to listen, give them a hug. Don't necessarily have to say anything at all, but it feels weird. It feels uncomfortable to not say something. And I think that's where we fall into that sort of trap.
That's the thing is, and this is why EQ is so important to me. This is why emotions are so important to me, because for me, if we can connect, understand, label, process, navigate what we are feeling, we'll be able to step into that space with somebody else. And that's where most of the time we don't know how to. And that's why we go into fix-it mode. That's why sometimes when you share something quite personal or shameful or hurtful with somebody else, they just don't stop talking. Because if I talk, I sort of take myself out of that uncomfortable space. And sometimes that drives disconnection. So let me chat to you a little bit about what empathy actually is and how we can step into this empathetic space. But actually, before I do that, I want to tell you a very interesting statistic. So the company that I studied through, 6 Seconds Emotional Intelligence Network, they've got these beautiful EQ tools that I utilize with my clients. And every year they take the statistics from, sorry, my emails seem to be popping through. They take the statistics from all of those reports and they create a summary of what's going on globally from an EQ perspective, as well as from each region. So with South Africa having more practitioners, we are able to see where South Africa is in terms of EQ. And what really stood out for me in the last 2 years when I read that report is empathy is actually on a decline. 2020, 2021, which was like, I thought if there's ever a time in our world right now that we need empathy, it's in these last 2 years. Really stepping into that empathetic space. So that's why I say empathy is a skill set. It's not something that we have to work on it. So that's what I wanted to say. Now let me tell you what empathy is. All right. So empathy is about listening to understand. If we are able to listen to understand, we are stepping into a active listening space. Again, another skill set that we can practice and learn and grow. And active listening is about being present in this moment, being mindful in this moment right now. So how often, I'm going to grab, but my cell phone's somewhere else. Grab your cell phone and somebody's talking to you and you're going, yeah, yeah, okay. We're not active listening because we are so busy being distracted that we're not focusing on that person in that moment. So immediately that person goes, okay, this person's not interested in my story, or I feel disconnected, or they're not acknowledging me. Also making ourselves vulnerable, which is what we spoke about just now, being able to sit in that discomfort while somebody shares something hugely painful or shameful for you. Feeling with somebody, not taking it away, again, stepping out of that pity space, out of that sympathy space, seeing each other as equal. So not going into that space of like, when somebody shares something and you go, oh my, can't believe you did that. You like that immediately that person goes, okay, I'm a bad person. I shouldn't have done that. I can't share the story with this person because you're making them feel bad about it. Removing yourself from the picture. Again, I think what you said earlier is we feel so uncomfortable that we just start talking and end up talking about ourselves. So for me, that's how we begin to show empathy, is being present, acknowledging. I think it's the biggest thing, is I acknowledge what you're going through, even if you don't think it's a big thing, just to say, hey, I see you, I feel you, and I hear you. And that person responds so positively to that.
Completely, Candice. And I also think so often when you're in a place where you with a colleague or your child or a friend or whoever, and they're sharing something with you that has caused them shame or something, the release they get in saying it out loud and seeing that the grass still grows, the sun's still shining, life's still going on. They've shared this thing that they're so embarrassed by, that they feel such pain about or whatever, and they've told someone, and it's a relief and it's okay. And that from there, that's almost when the healing will start. And it's actually a privilege to be a part of that.
I think that's the biggest thing, is when somebody has found the courage to share their story with you, you need to feel privileged, because look, there are some people that will share their whole life story and overshare. There are those people, and that's okay. And then there's people that don't have the courage. And when they finally step into that space to go, hey, I need to tell you something, you need to know right then that I need to step into that empathetic space, because they've found that courage. And there is a huge sense of relief, you know?
Yeah.
Can
And
I ask
sometimes
a
it's also, sorry, carry on, Jess.
Sorry, Lucy. So sometimes people come to you and they do genuinely want guidance, advice, some sort of response for you, from you. Would you advise, like, saying to the person, you know, straight out, do you want me to just sit and listen, or are you looking for me to help you, guide you, chat this through, and kind of be upfront about it?
I think it is so important, and I was going to talk about that when we spoke about compassion. So empathy for me is very much around the feeling element, and compassion for me is around the action element. I often speak about thinking, feeling, and acting when I coach. You know, how am I thinking? How's the thinking impacting my feeling, and how am I showing up? So compassion for me is the action step. So because I feel so empathetic, I want to step into the space of compassion. And what does that look like? And sometimes we hit a miss. Sometimes we're not connecting with what that person needs right now. So I often say, what does support look like for you? Let me know how I can support you. So, like, if we have to speak about it like a script when we're speaking to people, and saying, I can see this is hugely painful for you, or I can see how you're struggling with this. Thank you for sharing this story with me. Please let me know how I can support you in this. Because maybe you are a touchy, huggy, feely person, and you go and you give this person a big squeeze, and they're going, this is the last thing I want right now. You know, they're all almost stiffen up. Or you go like, this is what you must do, and then you must do this. And they're going, actually, I just sit next to me and be quiet. That's all I want. Don't touch me. Don't even look at, sometimes it's even a look in the eye that sends them into a spin. So how can I support you right now? It's so important. What does that look like for you? And it may just you be sitting next to them on a bench, holding the energy of the space, not necessarily doing anything. So 100%.
This is so valuable. It would be so nice if we could just know always how the other person's feeling and tap into that, because we do tend to respond how we would like people to respond to us. And like, I mean, I'm that touchy-feely person. I'm that person who wants to give tons of advice when I can see the other person's like, right now, I don't want advice. And I have to go, Stacey, stop. Just stop, sit and listen. And so knowing when and how, and knowing the other person's what their needs are, so valuable. So asking is incredible. Yes.
And completely. And I also think that sometimes things can be different. I had a situation with a friend recently, and she was devastated, and I don't know why. I used like a little bit of humor. I'm like, you're absolutely right. Give me that person's number plate and I will get them taken out. Like what else can I, you know what I mean? Like as a joke, I try to like make it laugh. But sometimes you almost just need to diffuse it and say, okay, it's fine. Like, let's just have a laugh. Let's think about it. Like, why don't you write an email? Send it to me. I'll edit it and take out half your emotion out of it and make it a little bit professional. And then I'll forward it, and then you can send it on to your whoever you're dealing with. And I was like, but like it's going to be okay. Like, you've gone through the worst part now, and from here we can take action. You can take, and I'm gonna like check in with you. And I think that's it. Like, there's everyone needs something different. There's no cut and paste option, you know.
And I also think just trusting yourself in that moment. You know, maybe you know that person really well, and so you can navigate yourself around them. Maybe you don't. Just trusting what feels right in that moment, but being aware of not stepping into those empathy misses, because those can happen quite easily, and we almost do it unconsciously, automatically, because we haven't developed the skill set of empathy. So if I can just share those with you as well, because I think it's really important to know. Listen, there's times that I still step into these empathy misses. It's not that we're going to get it 100% right 100% of the time. So I always base it on the 80-20 rule, you know, as long as we're kind of meeting that that mark. So really, again, number one is sympathy. Ach, shame. Let's not do it. Let's step out of the pity. People don't like it. They feel disconnected. It's not an empathetic space. Making that, like we said earlier, making that person feel more shameful, reprimanding them, just like, oh, can't believe you did that. That's terrible. Like, what made you think you could behave like that? Any of those sort of like reprimanding, harsh words, judgmental words is not going to make that person feel good about themselves. Sharing your own worst story. How about, oh, well, you don't know what I went through. I will put my hand up right now to say that I've done that. And sometimes I start speaking and I go, oh, Candace, there you go again. You've done it. Empathy miss. All right. So just being aware of not sharing your worst story, because right now for that person, their story is the worst and they're going through a really tough time. Trying to, so Brené Brown uses the word silver lining it, which I love. And in the video I want to show you, you'll see how she does it. But that person's got this big dark cloud hanging over their head. There's nothing worse than going and putting a big silver line around it and saying, well, at least. Those two words are like my absolute worst. I can't deal with it. Somebody's sharing something really vulnerable, hurtful, shameful, and you go, oh, well, at least. You know, it sort of causes this disconnect. So I wanted to share those with you today because I think we do find ourselves in that space sometimes. So just to have those in the back of your mind and start practicing to step out of it is really important.
Candace, do you think one of the reasons why South Africans aren't going through a very empathetic stage at the moment is because everyone's kind of had so much on their plate that it's almost made us like, or like perhaps people have been having their own, like they've just had to disconnect because they can't take on anyone else's pain, suffering, trauma, or I don't know. I'm just trying to think like, why would you find that, do you think?
I personally think it is the case. I think people have dealt with, especially for us in KZN, not to downplay the rest of the country, but there's like this constant, like we take a breath and there's something else, and we take a breath and there's something else. And I think in terms of emotional capacity, mental well-being, I think people are being stretched and pushed to their limits. So yeah, it is quite difficult to step into that empathetic place. But I think today my message would be just be aware of it. You know, if you feel like you don't have the capacity to hold space for somebody, have the courage to say, I'm really sorry, I wish I could be here for you right now, but I'm not going to show up in the best way that I can for you. But people don't, because they feel bad, they feel guilty to maybe set that little boundary to say, I just can't right now. And it's a really courageous space to be in. Not many people can step into that place. So it's also understanding where you're at. I think if you have reached at that point, you can't take anything else on to be able to share openly that that's where you are. But I think you're right, Lucy. I think people are at the end of their road. It's been a tough 2 years.
Completely, yeah.
Candace, I wanted to know if you do find yourself like I'm a little bit preconditioned, that I will generally just say I'm sorry, and I genuinely do, I am sorry, and or oh shame, I'm so sorry. If you do find yourself in that space where you're not being as empathetic and you could be, or you are coming across insensitive, what do you think you can step back and say, I'm so sorry, I'm sorry for how I'm behaving, because I'm a little bit preconditioned in this area and I need to learn to step into a space where I just listen. Like, is that an okay response as well when you find yourself falling back into those old practices and habits?
Yeah, I think number one is definitely having a lot of self-compassion for yourself, because I'm going to geek out here a bit, so just excuse me, but from a neurological perspective, those preconditions, you must remember we're laying down those neural pathways by doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. Now you're trying to learn a new skill set that does take time to build those new neural pathways. So absolutely, I think how beautiful and vulnerable is that space to be able to say, you know what, I did it again. I found myself stepping out of empathy and I'm really sorry for that, but just know that I'm here for you. I think that'll go a long way in terms of the relationship. I often find that when I'm defaulting to old patterns or old behaviors, the minute I say, and I make a joke of it, I'm like, oh, the old Candace came out. I'm sorry about that. I'm trying to be better. you sort of soften that space between the two people as well. So absolutely.
That's amazing.
And to add to that, Candice, I think a lot of conversations these days are over text. So, in person, it's easy to show empathy by sitting and listening and taking it all in. How do we show empathy over a WhatsApp message, for example, where, the silence wouldn't exactly be empathy in that case? It would probably be quite mean. So, yeah, how would we show it in that sort of space?
Very tough space to navigate when it comes to emotions in general. And, we can't read tone in a text. There's no way you can actually see what that person is saying unless you overload it with emojis. But even then, emojis to some people are different to others. So it is a difficult space. And I think here in the online sort of digital world, very much being very clear in how you communicate. Again, I'm going to refer to Brené Brown because she's my hero, but she's got a saying that says, clear is kind and unclear is unkind. So being very clear in what it is you want to communicate and stepping back into that, what is my intention with what I want to say? What do I want the outcome to be here? And that very much comes with slowing down, being mindful, being present while you're texting, again, like that active listening on WhatsApp, but really being present, not speaking to your children, trying to cook dinner, a husband comes home and you're trying to be empathetic. You're not going to find yourself in that empathetic space. So I think for WhatsApp, I think you really need to be mindful, give that person the time that they deserve. And if you can't, have the courage to say, hey, can you just give me 10 minutes, just finishing off dinner, and then I can give you time. And I think that's really important when it comes to relationships, because if we are not acknowledging that person when they're sharing something quite personal with you, they're going to go, this person's not interested in me. So saying to that person, I'm just finishing off something right now, or how important is this? Can we chat about it tomorrow? And just getting curious, asking those questions. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Candice. The sympathy, empathy video, are we going to have a look at? Yeah, awesome.
I want to show that now. Cool. So give me a second. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
We can see it.
If the sound doesn't work, just give me a little wave. Okay, so this is Brené Brown's video on empathy and sympathy, and it's quite humorous, but it also gives you some clear guidelines on how to step into that empathetic space. Where's my play button here now? Sorry, guys. Let me just... Now my computer's gone. Sorry, give me a second. Sorry, it's not letting me play the video. Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go.
So what is empathy, and why is it very different than sympathy? Empathy fuels connection. Sympathy drives disconnection. Empathy, it's very interesting. Teresa Wiseman is a nursing scholar who studied professions, very diverse professions where empathy is relevant, and came up with 4 qualities of empathy. Perspective taking, the ability to take the perspective of another person or recognize their perspective as their truth. Staying out of judgment, not easy when you enjoy it as much as most of us do. Recognizing emotion in other people and then communicating that. Empathy is feeling with people. And to me, I always think of empathy as this kind of sacred space when someone's kind of in a deep hole and they shout out from the bottom and they say, I'm stuck, it's dark, I'm overwhelmed. And then we look and we say, hey, you can climb down. I know what it's like down here, and you're not alone. Sympathy is, ooh, it's bad, no. You want a sandwich? Empathy is a choice, and it's a vulnerable choice, because in order to connect with you, I have to connect with something in myself that knows that feeling. Rarely, if ever, does an empathic response begin with at least. Yeah. And we do it all the time. Because you know what? Someone just shared something with us that's incredibly painful, and we're trying to silver lining it. I don't think that's a verb, but I'm using it as one. We're trying to put the silver lining around it. So, I had a miscarriage. Oh, at least you know you can get pregnant. I think my marriage is falling apart. At least you have a marriage. John's getting kicked out of school. At least Sarah is an A student. But one of the things we do sometimes in the face of very difficult conversations is we try to make things better. If I share something with you that's very difficult, I'd rather you say, I don't even know what to say right now. I'm just so glad you told me. Because the truth is, rarely can a response make something better. What makes something better is connection.
So yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Superb. Thank you for sharing that with us. That was really great. It's just, I know it's like a bit of humor, but it's just the way it explains is just like, you just get it. It's basic and it's, yeah. It's actually so nice even to show, I've got 3 sons, so I show my kids because I like they can, you know what I mean?
Yeah, this
Great
is
for kids to
definitely,
understand it too.
yeah, this is definitely a video that I show my clients, and Helena, I can share. Yeah, if you even if you just Google empathy versus sympathy, Brené Brown, it comes up, and I'm sure we can pop that link in the record or the bottom of the chat in Facebook. I'll send it to the ladies, and you can have a watch.
And Candace, I can actually also see there was another question asking, what words would you suggest people use instead of saying at least, if you want to try and show a positivity into this situation, or lead someone into a more positive? Do you think they should focus rather on just saying be, you know, at a later stage referring to things in their life they should be grateful for? Or how do you sometimes get someone to look on the positive side of things? Because sometimes it's necessary.
Yeah, so Lucy, like you said earlier, sometimes you need to sort of like shift the energy around with a bit of humor. I think the words, at least, if we can avoid them altogether, it's definitely not an empathetic response. The thing with
what
empathy,
about grateful? Do you think like the word grateful, like it's quite tricky as well, hey?
It is tricky. So let me say this. If somebody's sharing something really tough with you, if you turn around and say to them, just be grateful for, or what are you grateful for? It sort of causes that disconnect. It's almost too soon. For me, it's around allowing them to process what they're going through. And then once we move through the conversation, you could say, you know what really helps me when I'm feeling like this is when I find one thing that I'm grateful for. I don't know if it's worth you giving it a try, but to do it in that moment as they've shared something, I think it causes a bit of disconnect. So stay away from at least. Yes, helping them see something from a different point of view is really important. But you've got to, it's a tricky one because the timing needs to be right. I would honestly, if you can't find the words, if you're navigating yourself out of that empathy miss of saying at least, it's, for me, empathy is about acknowledgement. And that can be as simple as, sure, I can see how hard this is for you right now. Or like in the video, you know, I don't really know what to say, but just know that I'm here for you. You've got to allow that person to go through that process, those feelings, that you know, that time, and then asking like, how can I support you? And maybe it is like, I need you to help me find the positive in this, or whatever the situation is.
And so often people will actually tell you, okay, let me think about it and I'll tell you what I need, and they will. I want to come back to, because I know you spoke a bit about you deal with teenagers, and I know you're a mom of 2 teenagers, and what are your, regarding teenagers and shame? Because sometimes things can happen with our kids where maybe they don't perform in a certain way at school, or a social event, or, you know, something happens in their life and they feel shame. And as anyone who's felt shame, and every single person, every one of us has felt ashamed or felt shame at some point, it's such a horrible thing because you want to hide, you don't want to give it space, you don't want to share it with anyone, you want to just like kind of, you know, suppress it and pretend it never happened. But once you do share it and get it lightens it so much, and you actually can move into space of how do you think the best way is to support teenagers once they've shared their shame with you, or if they are going through something that they are ashamed about?
So this would probably apply to adults and teenagers. A couple of things I want to say. So shame, remember, is I am a bad person. That is what shame actually is. They are labeling themselves as a bad person, not what they did as bad. So it's themselves. So also teenagers and their brains are completely operating from an emotional space. Okay, their emotional brain is running the show for them. So they are going to feel a lot deeper. So shame is just, it's massive for them. And like you would with an adult when they're going through a shame spiral, is just holding space for them while they go through it, and then stepping into the empathetic space saying, I can see that you're really being hard on yourself right now. And maybe using some self-compassion tips. So bringing in if this was a friend at school, what would you be saying to your friend right now? Yeah. It is such a simple tool, but it is so powerful because it helps you reframe your thinking. And this is the thing, is we go into these like thought spirals about, oh, I was so bad and I embarrassed myself and I tripped up the stairs at assembly and everybody laughed at me. Now I'm the idiot. And, and they're going through the spiral. So you've got to stop that spiral and just help them see a little bit of self-compassion. So if this was your friend, what would you be saying to them right now? Sometimes everybody makes a mistake. So taking them out of that over-identification of what they're going through into other people trip up the stairs at school. When I was at school, my best friend tripped up the stairs and her dress came over her head. And again, bringing a bit of humor, bringing in a bit of relatability, making them feel like they're not the only ones that have gone through this. Because with teenagers, they are the only ones that have ever experienced anything in the whole world, okay? Because that's what they do. But even for adults, sometimes we feel like we're the only ones that have ever gone through a certain situation or experience. And sometimes it's just a matter of saying, hey, I know that so-and-so also went through this situation. Maybe, you want to chat to them. And I'm referring, the reason why this is so important to me is when I was going through my treatment for breast cancer, chatting to somebody who had walked the journey just made that process make me feel like I'm not the only one in the whole world feeling like I was feeling. And that's why support groups are really so important when it comes to going through trauma or experience. Yeah.
And I think all of us can sort of learn from that in terms of, valuing ourselves on who we are, not necessarily what we do or what we've sort of done in the past. We recently did a teen course and Candice was one of the amazing coaches and she spoke a lot on empathy and compassion and all these things. And Candice, another tool that you gave the teens was the permission slip.
Yeah. So this is also a very, very simple tool, but let's tap back into when we were all at school and we had to go, or maybe your kids are in school at the moment and they have to go on an excursion. You get a letter from the school and you've got to say so-and-so is allowed to go on the excursion. So what I often do is either in the beginning of my coaching sessions or with my teen clients is, what do I give myself permission for today? And sometimes just saying it out loud allows you to be okay in that space. Like, I give myself permission to feel all the feels. I give myself permission to have a courageous conversation. I give myself permission to set this boundary that is important for me. And I often do it on Post-it notes and we stick it up all over the place, which also just allows them to be okay with what they're going through. Yeah.
Can I tell you something? I love that so much. And it is so powerful. I went to a stage where I was at one point, I was like, okay, I've got to try and we're not in lockdown anymore, Lucy. You can stop, like melting marshmallows and tomorrow biscuits, whatever I was doing in lockdown in the afternoons with my tea and making French toast, all sorts of stuff. And then I was like, do you know what? On a weekend, I give myself permission to drive to the shop, choose the chocolate, come home and have it. And I never felt like I needed to have chocolate during the week at all, because I knew I was going to on the weekend. And it's even like with small things in your life, you can say, I'm going to give myself permission to do that, to do this. And it just takes away I mustn't be doing this at all, or I can't do this. It just gives you that space where it's fine. Just yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Takes away that guilt and shame that you mentioned, Lucy. So yeah, it's so simple but so effective.
And
there's lots of little tools. Yeah, there's lots of little tools that you can utilize that are so powerful. I mean, the permission slip, the how would you speak to a friend, writing yourself a letter. I mean, self-compassion is again, for me, is a skill set that needs to learn, because we are our own worst enemies. We speak to ourselves so badly. And writing ourselves a letter to say, you know, it's okay. It's all right if you lost your temper with your child, or you hooted at the taxi driver, or you had a meltdown in the shops. It's okay. These things are normal. 80-20 rule is my thing when I journal to myself.
It's amazing. Yeah,
Yes,
it's amazing when you mirror it back, hey? It gives you such a different perspective. Like I said to my kids on the weekend, one of them was cheeky. And I said, would you say that to your teacher? And he was like, no. I said, well, why would you say it to me? I'm the most important person in your life, you know? And he was like, oh, yeah. And it's saying it to them too. Would you say that to a friend? No. Well, you are so important to you. So why would you say it to yourself? Why are we so hard on ourselves? And you gave us so many incredible tools in that teen course. Thank you. So if anyone would like to get the teen course, we have it on Connectable app. It is jam-packed with incredible content. So Candace this is a game changer. Thank you.
So are your sessions all mostly done online, not in person?
Yeah, so when COVID hits, I let go of the room that I was hiring, and I do mostly online. If a client does want to see me face to face, I now coach in coffee shops, which is pretty cool. Get a nice cappuccino. But yeah, online just makes it easier and more accessible for people, because you know, it's quick and easy. You log on, log
completely off. And also you don't have the drive time. I know for me, but now that in-person stuff's come back, and I said to someone, I'm so sorry, I need to shift that appointment, because I actually didn't factor in that it was in person. I need to drive there and drive back. And I mean, I live in Umhlanga, and I need to get the Belito, and I need to now factor in, I can half an hour there, half an hour back. So we just need to, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and that was the whole point of us creating Connectable app. You know, we created Connectable before COVID even was a thing, and our whole hope was that people can now cut out all of that wasted time in appointment, you know, just waiting in waiting rooms, waiting in traffic, having to wait to get an appointment. You know, it just allows that waiting space to be out the window. So you can book with Candace on Connectable app, and you can message her through Connectable.
And Candace, I was going to say, like, I know how you said how passionate you are about Brené Brown, and I've obviously come across some of her stuff. And one of her favorite things that I picked up from her and that I use a lot in my life is where she's like, what is the story you're telling yourself? Get a different viewing point and deal with the facts and the truth. And she did a talk where something had happened in her life, and the story that she was telling herself and what she had kind of made up to support her insecurities or where she was at was so far from actually what was happening, you know? And that's so often you just need that perspective.
100%, and I didn't get a chance to share this, but again, it's there's two books that I want to actually recommend for you. So anything Brené Brown, okay, because she's amazing, and it's exactly that. She'll speak about the stories that and the lies that we believe, the stories we believe. But there's another really good book that I want to recommend. It's by the Arbinger Institute. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. Now, I don't want you to get put off by the title leadership. Whether you're in a leadership role or not, we lead in our lives with our relationships, whether we lead our families, our friends, our church groups, whatever it is, you're leading in some way in your life. And this book speaks about self-deception, and they use a little analogy of being in the box and out the box, all right? And it speaks into exactly this, is sometimes we step out of our authenticity and into self-deception because we're so convinced of what we're believing is true that we continue to show up inauthentic. So let me give you a little example quickly. So it's a beautiful book. It's short. It's a story. You will love it. So if you can get your hands on a copy, get that. But let me explain to you what I mean. I like to make things practical and relatable for people. So there's a couple that just had a baby together, and we all know that the first 6 months of life is very tiresome because you're getting up all night. And the baby has now cried 4 times in the night. And on that 4th time, the husband goes, I should really help my wife. But the very next thought that he has is, actually, no, she's at home all day. I've got to get up and go to work. And so he rolls over and he goes back to sleep. In that moment there, he has deceived himself because he's stepping out of his authenticity. He's not doing what he really wants to do for her. And so he's now in the back of the mind going, yeah, this is nonsense, and I should maybe go sleep in another room, and blah, blah, blah. And my wife didn't get up immediately. What's wrong with her? So he's now creating this whole bubble. Can you imagine this whole bubble next to his head? She's irritated because she's now got up for the 4th time for the baby. She's exhausted. She deals with baby all day. She gets back into the bed. My husband's lazy. He does nothing, blah, 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 story on her side of her head. And so now we've got 2 people in the box. We've got 2 people self-deceiving. So you can actually see how this then creates conflict. And it can build and build and build until there's a massive explosion because we're not having the tough conversations in the right way, with the right methods. And that's a topic for a whole nother day, is tough conversations. But it's how do I communicate with this person? Because even if you're walking down the corridor at work or going to the copy machine and you walk past Jane, and you go, hey, Jane, and Jane goes, like, gives you this half smile, and you walk and you think, did I do something wrong? Is she cross with me? You know, the other day I said this, this, and this, and maybe she's angry with me. And now you've created this whole story that Jane's angry with you. If you had gone to Jane and say, hey, Jane, yesterday I greeted you and you seemed a little bit upset. Is everything okay? She would turn around and say to you, oh, the boss just moaned at me because I lost a big deal or something. That actually has nothing to do with you, but now we're believing the story that we've created for ourselves. So get the Arbinger leadership, self-deception and leadership and self-deception, because it'll help you understand how we find ourselves.
I love that. And I love how you said, like, stepping out in authenticity, because I always say, like, can we just deal on the truth? Like, give me the facts, not what you think is happening, not what you thought you saw, not how you felt or whatever. Can we give me the facts and let's deal in the truth? And then we can kind of go from there. And I think that's it. Like, when you deal in the truth, it makes it so much harder. It makes it so much easier to move forward because you kind of know where everyone's at. It's really good.
So that's the start of a tough conversation, is stepping out of the judgment, the criticism, what you think happened, how it should have happened, and sharing it. This is what happened, as I would envision on a video, like a snippet of a movie. That's what you're sharing. You're sharing how it makes you feel, and you're getting curious. You really just, like, I don't understand. Can you just explain to me what happened here? It takes that judgment, that defensiveness, everything. You step out of that, and you're able to have a real conversation. But the minute you go into, I think you should have, finger pointing, people get defensive, and that's where the conflict begins.
You know, it's so funny. I had a situation where I was busy, needed to dash into the shops to get some groceries because otherwise there was going to be no food, for no milk, no bread or whatever. And I saw someone that I know, and they were like so excited to see me, and I literally gave them the cold shoulder, because not that I didn't like them, but I was in a space where I was task orientated. I need to get milk, the bread, get, orange juice, paid, get in the car, get home before whatever. And they were like, Luce, I'm so sorry, like, is everything okay with us? Because you were so unfriendly, like, wherever I was. And I was like, no, you are magnificent and everything's fine with us. What wasn't okay was the fact that I was now late. My son was messaging from home, said he was starving. I had a son that was going to a soccer practice and couldn't have it. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't about you, it was about where I was at. And in that space, I was just like, and
that's the biggest thing, is something that I learned not so long ago, is it's actually, when it comes to relationships, it's really about us and how we're showing up. It's really got nothing to do with the other person. If you think about what can I control and what I can't control, the only thing that I can control is myself and how I'm showing up in this relationship. And there's one more thing I want to quickly share with you. Brené Brown calls it generosity, but it's, if I assume that somebody is doing the best that they can, what does that do for me as an individual? We don't know. We really don't know if somebody is doing the best that they can. But if we assume, it takes us out of that overthinking, stories that we're building, lies that we're believing, because we're assuming they're doing the best they can. So let's just quickly do this exercise. Think about back over the weekend or last week, where somebody got on your last nerve. Okay, you were completely irritated by them. So quickly bring that person into the forefront of your mind. How much energy did you expend being frustrated, angry, or sad? How much judging was there? How much finger pointing, criticizing was there? All right, have we got that person? Now I'm going to say this statement to you. What would it feel like, look like, or sound like if you had to have assumed that person was doing the best that they could? So I'm going to say it one more time. What would it feel like, sound like, and look like if you assumed that that person was doing the best that they could? So for me, there is a huge sense of relief. I almost get this settling within inside of myself to say, sure, I don't know if they are or aren't, but if I assume, it stops me with this internal chatter, with the stories and lies that I'm starting to build and believe. It's almost an inherently selfish act to say I assume, because it takes me out of that spiral. So I don't know what happened for those on the call or for you ladies, but yeah.
I think it definitely allows you to move into the space of empathy and to act with compassion, basically. To sort of see things from their perspective.
And also to presume that it's not personal, it's maybe not malicious, that it's the tools that they had in their hand, where they were at, that was the situation for them, and how they, and perhaps if you were in that position, you could have handled it differently, you would have actioned things differently, you would have had a different, but that's, and also you are gonna, I often find so often there will be a thing in my life where I'm the person that maybe now letting someone down, and I actually understand a little bit, start thinking about compassion to the person that I was judging, angry with, frustrated with, because I didn't feel they had done their job properly. And now I'm in a position where this person doesn't feel that I've done my job properly. And maybe the reasons are, whatever, they're circumstantial. But so often, like when you realize, okay, who in my life could I be doing this to? I was irritated once when someone didn't phone me back. And my friend said, but there must be someone in this world that you haven't phoned back. It's not that you never phone me. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I never phone back, whatever, like often when we're frustrated about someone when they haven't done something, we too are doing it to somebody else, Yeah.
So it very much speaks into, in the video that we watch now with Brené Brown, it speaks into perspective taking. If we just slow down, pause, for me, it's hitting that pause button, taking a breath and going, okay, maybe they're busy, or I possibly haven't phoned somebody back. Or it's reframing, it's thinking of it from a different perspective, staying out of judgment. Listen, I think as a society, I think we love to judge ourselves and other people. Let's step out of that, step out of the judgment, get curious, ask questions, show empathy, show compassion, be brave enough to have those tough conversations. Like your friend said to you, I bumped into you in the shops and you seemed a bit off, what's going on? It's a courageous space to step into, but it stops that internal chatter that goes on in the back of our minds. And so relationships and navigating relationships can be overwhelming, but there are things that we can do. There are tools we can do. Step off that autopilot merry-go-round of doing the same old, same old. If you want to have something different, if you want to have a relationship show up differently, then step off of that merry-go-round. Hit the pause button. Ask what I want in this situation. How can I show up authentically right now? So I'm going to leave you with 3 parting thoughts. Are you in the box or out the box? Are you self-deceiving or are you being authentic? How much generosity can you show in terms of assuming somebody is doing the best that they can? And are you showing up with empathy, or is empathy a skill set that you need to learn and develop?
Awesome.
Thank you so
Amazing.
much. Wow, I am so grateful that I got to share the space with you, that ladies, that we got to start the month of August, Women's Month, with Candace giving us just an hour of her time and all this insight and help. And really, these are, I don't know about, I mean, you can't see, but I've been making notes here, just in my own life and in my own career and in my own workplace, on just things that I can, where I know that I needed this from. So thank you for sharing with me. I really, really appreciate it, ladies. And it was so lovely to see you all this morning and
Yes,
again.
Feels
Thank
like
you
the
so
perfect
much.
start to the month and Women's Month.
Yes.
And yeah, thank you everybody for joining us.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you so
thank
much,
you.
everyone. Candace, this was amazing.
Thanks
Thank
so
you so much. And I just feel like this is something all of us need to learn, because it doesn't come naturally for most people. Some people it does come naturally, and you can see those teenagers who know the space. For most teens, it doesn't come naturally. So these are things we need to learn and put into our toolbox and specifically go out and get. So thank you so much for sharing these with us.
Lovely sharing the space with you.
Candace. Thanks, Lucy.
And
Thanks,
have a
everyone.
lovely rest of your
Thanks,
day. Thanks for
Lucy.
everyone for watching
Yeah.
online at Facebook. And for those us, we'll be sharing the link so that people can watch it a bit later on too. Happy Monday, everyone. Bye-bye.